People like you don't belong in first class.
The words sliced through the aircraft cabin like a razor blade. Rebecca Morrison, flight attendant on Flight 8847, towers over the black woman in the oversized hoodie with pure disgust written across her face. Her voice drips with contempt as she continues, "Move to economy where your kind belongs, now." What Rebecca doesn't know is devastating. The woman she's humiliating doesn't just own a first-class ticket. She owns the terminal. She owns the runways. She owns the ground Rebecca stands on. And in exactly 47 minutes, she'll own Rebecca's entire career. Before we dive into this story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever been judged by your appearance and then shocked everyone with who you really are? Drop your story in the comments below. And if you believe respect shouldn't depend on designer labels, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. We want to hear from you, and your support means everything to this channel. Now let me take you inside Terminal 3 at Denver International Airport, where assumptions, arrogance, and absolute power are about to collide in the most spectacular way possible. This is a story about dignity, justice, and what happens when someone finally has the power to fight back. But more than that, it's about why we should never ever judge a book by its cover. The woman sitting in seat 1A wasn't just any passenger. Her name was Maya Thompson, and at 42 years old, she had built something extraordinary. Maya was the CEO of Atlas Global Properties, an $18 billion real estate empire that specialized in one thing: owning the places where people said she didn't belong. 3 days ago, Maya had closed the largest airport management deal in United States history. Atlas Global had acquired the management rights to 6 major American airports, including the very terminal where she now sat. Denver International Airport was hers. Every gate, every runway, every square inch of concrete and steel now answered to her company. But you wouldn't know any of this by looking at her. Maya wore what appeared to be a simple gray hoodie. In reality, it was a $4,000 Brunello Cucinelli cashmere blend that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her black leggings were Lululemon. Her sneakers were limited edition. Balenciaga, and the worn-looking leather bag beside her was a vintage Hermes Birkin worth more than a luxury car. But to the untrained eye, to someone who judged value by flash and status by labels, Maya looked like nobody special. She looked tired because she was. The last 4 days had been spent in hostile takeover negotiations with city officials, union representatives, and corporate lawyers who had tried everything to prevent her acquisition. Maya had outmaneuvered them all. She'd won. But victory came with exhaustion, and all she wanted now was to fly home to Miami and sleep in her own bed. Maya had chosen to fly commercial instead of taking her private jet for a simple reason: she wanted to stay under the radar until tomorrow morning's press release. The deal was done, but the public announcement wouldn't come until markets opened. Tonight, she was just another passenger heading home. Or so she thought. Denver International Airport's Terminal 3 buzzed with the familiar chaos of delayed flights and frustrated travelers. A spring storm had rolled across the Colorado plains, bringing with it the kind of weather that turned travel itineraries into wishful thinking. Departure boards blinked with red delayed notifications like warning lights on a sinking ship. But inside the first-class boarding area for United Airways Flight 8847, the atmosphere was supposed to be different. This was where money bought you courtesy, where premium passengers received premium treatment. This was where people like Maya Thompson were supposed to feel welcome. Rebecca Morrison had been working as a flight attendant for 8 years. She prided herself on being able to spot the real first-class passengers from the fake ones within seconds. The real ones wore tailored suits, carried designer luggage, and moved with the quiet confidence that came from generational wealth. The fake ones tried too hard, wore obvious logos, and usually got caught trying to scam their way into premium cabins. When Rebecca looked at Maya Thompson, she saw fake written all over her. Maya stood quietly in the priority boarding line, holding her phone with her digital boarding pass clearly displayed. She wasn't talking loudly on a phone call about important business deals. She wasn't flashing expensive jewelry or designer handbags. She was just standing there waiting her turn like everyone else. To Rebecca, this was suspicious. Real rich people in Rebecca's experience made sure everyone knew they were rich. They name-dropped their connections, mentioned their expensive purchases, and treated flight attendants like personal servants. Maya did none of these things. She was quiet, polite, and unassuming. Rebecca had seen this before. Young black women who somehow managed to get first-class boarding passes, probably through credit card points or last-minute upgrades, then acted like they belonged among the truly wealthy passengers. It was Rebecca's job, she believed, to maintain the standards of the cabin and ensure that only legitimate passengers received premium service. Behind Maya in line stood David Parker, a 45-year-old corporate attorney from Chicago. David had flown first class hundreds of times, and he knew the drill. Show your pass, get a warm smile, walk to your seat. Simple. When it was David's turn, Rebecca's entire demeanor transformed. Her spine straightened. Her smile became genuine, and her voice took on the warm, professional tone that United Airways trained their flight attendants to use with premium passengers. "Good afternoon, Mr. Parker," Rebecca said, somehow knowing his name before looking at his boarding pass. "Welcome aboard Flight 8847. Right this way to your seat in first class. Can I take your jacket for you?" David nodded politely and walked onto the aircraft. He'd been upgraded due to his frequent flyer status, and while he appreciated the courtesy, he didn't think much of it. This was just how first-class service worked. Then Maya stepped forward. The transformation in Rebecca's demeanor was immediate and stark. Her warm smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. Her posture became rigid and defensive. Her eyes conducted a slow, judgmental scan from Maya's messy bun down to her worn sneakers and back up to the oversized hoodie. It was a look of pure, unfiltered judgment. "Boarding pass?" Rebecca said. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Her tone dropped an octave, losing all the warmth she had shown David Parker just seconds before. Maya held up her phone, the screen clearly displaying her boarding information. "Seat 1A, she said simply. Rebecca didn't even look at the screen. She looked at Maya's face, then at her clothes, then back at her face. In Rebecca's mind, the math didn't add up. Black woman plus casual clothes plus first-class boarding pass equaled scam. Ma'am Rebecca said, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who believed she was exposing a fraud. "This is the priority boarding line. Economy boarding is Group 4, which hasn't been called yet. You need to step back into the terminal and wait for your group to be announced." Maya's response was calm but firm. "I know where I am. I'm in first class. Seat 1A. She tried to step forward, but Rebecca physically shifted her body to block the aisle. It was a subtle move, but unmistakably aggressive. Rebecca had positioned herself as a human barrier between Maya and the aircraft. "Let me see that boarding pass." Rebecca snapped her hand, already reaching toward Maya's phone. The interaction had taken less than 30 seconds, but it had already attracted attention. Other passengers in the boarding area were beginning to notice that something was wrong. The smooth efficiency of first-class boarding had come to a complete halt. Maya handed over her phone, though she didn't appreciate having it snatched from her hand. Rebecca stared at the screen, her brow furrowing as she processed what she was seeing. The QR code clearly stated M. Thompson Seat 1A First Class. The ticket was legitimate, purchased at full fare with all the proper confirmations. Most people would apologize at this point. Most people would realize they had made an embarrassing mistake and try to smooth things over with excessive politeness. Rebecca Morrison, however, was not most people. Instead of apologizing, Rebecca let out a sharp, dismissive scoff that was loud enough for everyone in the boarding area to hear. "System error," she announced, as if she were a detective who had just cracked a complicated case. "Excuse me," Maya asked, her patience beginning to wear thin. "There's been a glitch in the mobile app all day," Rebecca explained, handing the phone back to Maya as if it were contaminated. "It's been upgrading economy tickets to premium cabins by mistake. The IT department is working on it, but until they fix it, I can't let unauthorized passengers into first class." Rebecca's explanation sounded official and reasonable, except for one problem: it was completely made up. There was no glitch. There was no IT department working on mobile app issues. There was just Rebecca Morrison's prejudiced assumption that Maya Thompson couldn't possibly afford a first-class ticket. "I paid full fare for this ticket," Maya said calmly, though her voice carried a slight edge. $12,000. If you check your passenger manifest, you'll see my name listed exactly where it should be." "Ma'am," Rebecca replied, crossing her arms across her chest in a gesture that screamed authority and finality. "I don't have time to cross-reference the manifest for every person trying to scam a free upgrade. Look around you. There are respectable passengers waiting behind you who have legitimate tickets and important places to be." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Respectable passengers. The implication was clear: Maya was not respectable. Maya did not have a legitimate ticket. Maya did not have important places to be. Behind Maya, a businessman cleared his throat impatiently. "Come on," he called out. "Some of us have meetings to get to. Can we move this along?" Maya turned to look at the line of passengers behind her. Some looked annoyed by the delay. Others looked uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. A few had their phones out, though whether they were recording or just checking the time was unclear. Maya had faced moments like this before. Not exactly like this, but similar enough that she recognized the pattern. She was being tested. Her right to exist in a space she had paid to occupy was being questioned. Her dignity was being challenged by someone who believed they had the authority to determine where Maya belonged. 23 years ago, a younger Maya had failed this test. She had backed down, walked away, and slept in her car rather than fight for her right to be treated with basic human dignity. But that was then. This was now. And now Maya had power. "I'm going to my seat," Maya said, stepping around Rebecca with quiet determination. "Excuse me," Rebecca called out sharply. "You cannot go in there." But Maya was already walking. She turned left into the first-class cabin, found the seat marked 1A, and sat down. She buckled her seatbelt, put on her noise-canceling headphones, and closed her eyes. She hoped that would be the end of it. She was wrong. Maya Thompson's story didn't begin in the first-class cabin of Flight A847. It began 23 years earlier in a hotel lobby in Atlanta, Georgia, where a 19-year-old college student learned a lesson that would shape the rest of her life. It was 1999, and Maya was traveling home from her first year at Spelman College. She had saved for months to afford a decent hotel room for one night before catching her flight back to Chicago. She walked into the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton, her acceptance letter from Goldman Sachs' summer internship program folded carefully in her purse, her head held high despite her thrift store clothes. The man behind the front desk looked her up and down with the same expression Rebecca Morrison would wear decades later. "Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" he asked. "We cater to a specific clientele." Maya had shown him her confirmation number, her credit card, her driver's license. Everything checked out. But the man shook his head. "The computer shows us as fully booked," he lied. "Maybe try the Motel 6 down the street. That might be more appropriate." That night, 19-year-old Maya slept in her car in the hotel parking lot, watching wealthy guests come and go through glass doors she wasn't allowed to enter. She made 2 promises that night. She would never again be turned away from a place she had paid to enter, and she would build something so big that no one would ever question her right to exist in any space. It took her 23 years, but Maya kept both promises. After graduating from Spelman, Maya completed her Goldman Sachs internship, then her MBA from Wharton, then 10 years in private equity. She learned how money moved, how power worked, and how real estate was the foundation of both. In 2015, she founded Atlas Global Properties with a simple mission: own the places where discrimination happened, then change the rules. Hotels were first. Maya bought boutique properties, then luxury chains, then entire hospitality brands. Each acquisition came with new policies, new training, and new management. By 2020, Atlas Global controlled over 400 hotels across North America, and every single one operated under Maya's Universal Dignity Charter, a set of non-negotiable standards for how all guests would be treated regardless of their appearance, race, or perceived wealth. But hotels were just the beginning. Maya wanted bigger targets. She wanted the places where discrimination was most entrenched and least challenged. She wanted airports. Airports were perfect. They were government-regulated monopolies that provided essential services to millions of travelers. They were also places where prejudice flourished under the cover of security protocols and customer service standards. Maya had experienced airport discrimination herself dozens of times: extra security screenings, seat assignment errors, suspicious questioning about her ability to afford premium tickets. The Denver International Airport deal had taken 3 years to arrange. Maya's team quietly acquired debt positions, negotiated with municipal bondholders, and built relationships with city council members. When the airport authority announced they were seeking a private management partner, Atlas Global was ready. The negotiation process had been brutal. Maya faced skepticism, condescension, and outright hostility from officials who couldn't believe a black woman could control that kind of capital. She proved them wrong with bank statements, credit facilities, and legal teams that made their heads spin. The contract was signed on Monday. Maya now controlled the daily operations of Denver International Airport, along with 5 other major American airports. Tomorrow morning, the press release would go out. Stock prices would react, and Maya Thompson would officially become one of the most powerful people in American transportation. But tonight, she was just a tired passenger who wanted to go home. Maya had deliberately chosen to dress down for her flight home. She was exhausted from 3 days of hostile negotiations, and the last thing she wanted was to be recognized. Her $4,000 hoodie looked like something from Target. Her vintage Hermes bag looked like it had seen better decades. Her Balenciaga sneakers looked like they'd been purchased at an outlet store. Everything about Maya's appearance was designed to help her blend in and travel unnoticed. She hadn't counted on that same appearance making her a target. Flight 8847 was a Boeing 777-300ER, United's flagship aircraft for transcontinental routes. The first-class cabin featured 16 seats arranged in a 1-2-1 configuration, each with direct aisle access and enough space for a tall person to sleep comfortably. Seat 1A was Maya's preference for solo travel, a window seat with extra privacy and easy exit access. Maya settled into her seat and pulled out her phone. She had 47 text messages from her assistant, her legal team, and her executive staff. The Denver deal had created a cascade of immediate decisions that needed her attention. Maya scrolled through them quickly, responding to the most urgent items while the aircraft prepared for boarding to complete. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice the approaching storm. 5 minutes later, Maya's noise-canceling headphones were ripped from her head without warning. Her eyes snapped open to see Rebecca Morrison standing over her face, flushed with anger and righteousness. But Rebecca wasn't alone. Standing behind her was a young man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory specifically designed to produce entitled influencers. He was maybe 26 years old, wearing a flashy Balenciaga tracksuit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Unlike Maya's understated luxury, his outfit screamed for attention with neon colors, obvious logos, and accessories that caught the light from every angle. His platinum blonde hair had been dyed and styled with professional precision. In his hands, he held a professional-grade camera mounted on a stabilizing gimbal. The small red recording light blinked steadily as he filmed himself and everything around him. This was Tyler Brooks, a social media influencer with 2.8 million followers across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Tyler was known for three things: prank videos, displays of inherited wealth, and an absolute inability to recognize when he was being inappropriate. "See what I mean, mister?" Brooks Rebecca said, gesturing toward Maya as if she were evidence in a criminal trial. "I told you we had a squatter in your seat." Tyler pointed his camera lens directly at Maya's face, the red recording light blinking like a predatory eye. Maya could see herself reflected in the lens, and she knew that whatever happened next would be broadcast to millions of people within hours. "Yo guys, you are absolutely not going to believe this," Tyler announced to his camera, his voice carrying the grating enthusiasm of someone who turned every moment of his life into content. "So I booked out the entire first row for privacy, right? Like I specifically paid extra to make sure I could film without random people in my shots." Tyler walked closer to Maya, his camera following his movement. "And I walk onto the plane and this random woman is just chilling in my seat, like straight up sitting in 1A, which is my lucky seat for flying. I always sit in 1A. Can you believe the audacity?" Maya stared directly into the camera lens, then shifted her gaze to Tyler, then to Rebecca. She spoke with the deadly quiet voice of someone who was rapidly running out of patience. "Touch me again," Maya said, her words carefully measured, "and you will regret it for the rest of your life. This is my seat. I have a boarding pass. I paid for this ticket." "Ma'am," Rebecca hissed, her professional veneer completely gone now. "You need to get up right now. Mr. Brooks is a Diamond Medallion member with United Airlines. He's a VIP partner who brings significant business to our company. This seat was specifically reserved for him." Maya retrieved her phone again and held up the screen showing her boarding pass. "I have a reservation too. Seat 1A. The confirmation hasn't changed in the last 5 minutes." "I already told you," Rebecca shouted, completely losing her composure now. "That's a computer glitch. Look at yourself." Rebecca's voice carried across the entire first-class cabin, now attracting stares from other passengers. "Do you really think anyone believes you can afford this seat?" Rebecca gestured at Maya's appearance with open disgust. "You look like you're running from the law, not flying first class. Now get your trashy bag and move to economy, or I'm calling the captain and having you removed for disrupting aircraft operations." Tyler zoomed his camera in on Maya's sneakers, snickering as he provided commentary for his audience. "Check out those shoes, chat. Those things have definitely seen better days. Probably got the ticket from someone's trash, right?" Maya looked directly into Tyler's camera. Something cold and final settled in her chest. It wasn't anger anymore. It was the icy resolve of someone who had just decided that the game was over. "Call the captain," Maya said, leaning back in her leather seat with absolute calm. "In fact, call the police. Call airport security. Call the FBI if you want. I'm not moving from this seat." Rebecca's jaw tightened with the satisfaction of someone who believed she had just been given permission to escalate. "Fine. Have it your way." Rebecca walked to the aircraft intercom and pressed the call button. Her voice rang out through the passenger address unit, reaching every seat on the aircraft. "Captain Rodriguez to the first-class cabin. We have a security situation that requires immediate attention." Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had hoped this situation could be resolved quietly, but Rebecca and Tyler had made that impossible. They had chosen to escalate. They had chosen to make this public. They had chosen to turn this into a spectacle. Maya Thompson owned the building they were sitting in. She owned the tarmac they were parked on. She owned the jetway they had walked through to board this aircraft. In about 40 minutes, she would own their careers, their reputations, and their futures. But first, she would let them dig their hole a little deeper. Captain James Rodriguez had been flying commercial aircraft for 20 years. He had seen every possible passenger situation: drunk travelers, unruly children, medical emergencies, and the occasional fare dispute. What he had never seen was a first-class passenger who looked as out of place as the woman Rebecca was describing to him over the intercom. Captain Rodriguez trusted his crew. Rebecca Morrison had been flying with United for 8 years and had an excellent service record. If Rebecca said there was a passenger trying to scam her way into first class, then Captain Rodriguez believed her. When Captain Rodriguez walked into the first-class cabin, he automatically assumed that Maya was the problem. She was the only passenger who stood out. She was the only one who looked different. She was the only one who didn't fit the standard profile of a first-class traveler. "Ma'am," Captain Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. I understand there's been some confusion about your seating assignment. I'd like you to come with me so we can sort this out at the gate." Maya opened her eyes and looked at him. "There's no confusion, Captain. I'm sitting in my assigned seat. Seat 1A. If you'd like to verify that, you can check your passenger manifest." "My crew has informed me that there's been a ticketing error," Captain Rodriguez replied. "These things happen with the mobile app sometimes. We'll get it sorted out quickly, but I need you to step off the aircraft while we work through the computer." Captain Maya said, her voice still calm but carrying a slight edge now. "Did you personally review the manifest? Did you verify the supposed error? Or are you taking your crew's word for it?" Captain Rodriguez hesitated for just a moment. He hadn't actually checked the manifest. Rebecca had called him directly to the cabin, and he had assumed her assessment was accurate. But admitting that would undermine his crew's authority and his own. "Ma'am," he said more firmly, "I don't need to justify standard operating procedures to passengers. My crew has identified a seating discrepancy, and I need you to cooperate with our efforts to resolve it." "And if I refuse?" Maya asked. "Then I'll have to call airport police to remove you for disrupting aircraft operations and refusing to follow lawful crew instructions," Captain Rodriguez replied. "And I really don't want to do that. So please, let's make this easy for everyone." Tyler was still filming everything, providing running commentary for his audience. "This is absolutely wild, guys. She's really doubling down on this whole thing. Like the captain himself is here telling her to leave and she's just refusing. This is some serious main character energy." Maya looked around the first-class cabin. Other passengers were watching now. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked annoyed by the delay. But none of them were speaking up. None of them were questioning why a passenger with a valid boarding pass was being threatened with arrest. Maya had been in situations like this before, but never with this much power behind her. She could end this confrontation with a single phone call. She could reveal who she was and watch everyone's attitude change instantly. But she wanted to see how far they would take this. She wanted to document every moment of discrimination for the legal case that would inevitably follow. "Call the police," Maya said quietly. "Call whoever you want. I paid for this seat and I'm not moving." Captain Rodriguez pulled out his radio. "This is Captain Rodriguez on United Flight 8847. I need airport police to gate B28 for passenger removal. We have an unruly traveler refusing to follow crew instructions." As they waited for police to arrive, Maya pulled out her phone and sent a single text message to her Chief Operating Officer Marcus. "It's happening again. Terminal 3, Gate B28. Begin protocol." 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed with a reply. "Understood, Ms. Thompson. Recording everything. Legal team activated. Press release ready." Maya smiled for the first time since boarding the aircraft. Rebecca Tyler and Captain Rodriguez had no idea what they had just triggered. They thought they were dealing with a stubborn passenger who didn't know her place. They were about to learn exactly who Maya Thompson was, and exactly what her place in the world really looked like. David Parker had been watching the confrontation unfold from his seat in 2B with growing discomfort. As a corporate attorney who specialized in employment law, David recognized discrimination when he saw it. What was happening to the woman in 1A wasn't about seating assignments or ticketing errors. This was about prejudice, pure and simple. David had seen Rebecca Morrison's transformation when she interacted with him versus how she treated Maya. The difference had been stark and immediate. David got warm smiles and professional courtesy. Maya got suspicion and hostility. The only variable was the color of their skin. But David also recognized his own privilege in this situation. As a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit, his word would carry weight that Maya's might not. If he spoke up, people would listen. If he remained silent, he would be complicit in what was happening. David cleared his throat and leaned forward in his seat. "Excuse me, Captain Rodriguez," he said in the calm, measured tone he used in courtrooms. "Before you call the police, shouldn't you actually check the passenger manifest to verify whether there's been an error?" Captain Rodriguez turned toward David with surprise. Passengers didn't usually challenge crew decisions, especially not first-class passengers who typically wanted to avoid any kind of disruption to their travel experience. Sir Captain Rodriguez replied, "I appreciate your concern, but this is a crew matter. We have procedures for handling seating discrepancies." "I understand you have procedures," David continued, "but what I've witnessed is a passenger with a valid boarding pass being threatened with arrest without any verification of the supposed error. As an attorney, I have to say this looks like a potential civil rights violation." Rebecca whirled around to face David, her face flushed with anger. "Sir, you don't understand the full situation. This passenger has been uncooperative from the moment she tried to board. She's disrupting the entire boarding process." "Actually," David replied calmly, "I watched the entire interaction from the gate. She presented her boarding pass. You refused to look at it, and then you physically blocked her from entering the aircraft. That's not being uncooperative. That's being discriminated against." Tyler swung his camera toward David, sensing that the situation was about to get more interesting. "Oh, snap now, we've got passenger drama. Old dude is getting involved." David held up a hand toward Tyler's camera. "Young man, I suggest you stop recording without everyone's consent. You could be opening yourself up to serious legal liability." "It's a public space, bro," Tyler replied with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for his actions. "I can film whatever I want." Actually, David said this is private property owned by the airline and the airport authority. Recording people without their consent in a private space could constitute harassment, invasion of privacy, and potentially hate crime enhancement if it's motivated by the victim's race. Tyler's confidence wavered slightly, but he kept filming. "Hate crime. Dude, I'm just documenting what's happening. This woman is clearly trying to scam her way into first class, based on what evidence David asked. Have you seen proof that her ticket is invalid? Have you verified that there's actually a computer error? Or are you just assuming she's a scammer because of how she looks?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Tyler didn't have an answer because there was no answer that wouldn't expose his prejudice. Maya watched the exchange with interest. She hadn't asked for David's help, but she appreciated that someone was finally speaking up. Too often, discrimination happened in silence while bystanders looked away and pretended not to see what was happening right in front of them. Captain Rodriguez was growing frustrated with the situation. What should have been a simple passenger removal was turning into a complex debate about discrimination and civil rights. He needed to regain control of the situation. "Ma'am," he said to Maya, his voice harder now, "I'm giving you one final opportunity to voluntarily leave this aircraft. If you refuse, I will have you arrested for federal crimes, including interfering with a flight crew, disrupting aircraft operations, and refusing to follow lawful orders from authorized personnel." Maya looked directly at him. "Captain, those are serious charges. Are you absolutely certain you want to arrest a paying passenger who has committed no crime other than sitting in the seat she paid for?" "You're trespassing," Captain Rodriguez replied. "This aircraft is private property, and the crew has the authority to determine who is authorized to remain on board." "Trespassing requires that I be somewhere I'm not supposed to be," Maya said calmly. "I have a ticket that says I'm supposed to be in seat 1A. Unless you can prove that ticket is fraudulent, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Rebecca stepped forward again. The ticket is fraudulent because the computer glitch created false confirmations. I've seen this scam before. People use stolen credit cards or hacked accounts to purchase tickets, then act innocent when they get caught. David pulled out his phone. "I'm recording this conversation for legal purposes," he announced. "Ms. Morrison, you just accused this passenger of credit card fraud and hacking. That's defamation unless you have evidence to support those claims." "I don't need evidence," Rebecca snapped. "I have 8 years of experience recognizing suspicious passengers." Suspicious how David pressed. What specifically makes this passenger suspicious? Rebecca realized she was walking into a trap, but her anger pushed her forward anyway. "Look at her. Look at how she's dressed. Look at where she's trying to sit. The math doesn't add up." The math David repeated. "Can you explain what you mean by that?" Rebecca gestured at Maya with obvious frustration. "First class costs $12,000 for this route. You're telling me someone dressed like that has $12,000 to spend on a single flight?" The cabin went silent. Rebecca had finally said what everyone had been thinking, but no one had dared to articulate. She had reduced Maya to her appearance and concluded that black women in hoodies couldn't afford first-class tickets. David's voice was deadly quiet when he responded. "Ms. Morrison, you just admitted to profiling passengers based on their clothing and race. That's textbook discrimination." "I didn't mention race," Rebecca protested. "You didn't have to," David replied. The implication was clear to everyone in this cabin. Maya decided it was time to speak up. She had let Rebecca and Captain Rodriguez dig their hole deep enough. Now she would show them exactly how deep they had dug. Captain Rodriguez, Maya said, her voice carrying a new authority that made everyone in the cabin pay attention. "I want to make sure I understand your position. You're threatening to have me arrested for sitting in a seat I purchased with a valid ticket based solely on your crew's assessment of my appearance. Is that correct?" "That's not what Captain Rodriguez began." "Yes or no?" Maya interrupted. "Are you threatening to arrest me because your crew believes I don't look like I belong in first class?" Captain Rodriguez hesitated. When Maya put it that bluntly, his position sounded indefensible. But he was committed now. He couldn't back down without undermining his crew's authority. "I'm following standard procedures for handling passenger disputes," he said finally. "Standard procedures," Maya repeated. "Tell me, Captain, how many first-class passengers have you had arrested this year for sitting in their assigned seats?" "That's not relevant to this situation. It's completely relevant," Maya said. "Because if this is the first time you've threatened to arrest a passenger for a seating dispute, then it's not standard procedure. It's exceptional treatment. And the only exceptional thing about me is my race." Tyler was still filming, but his commentary had stopped. Even he was beginning to realize that he might be documenting something that could destroy his career rather than enhance it. Airport police arrived at that moment, boarding the aircraft with the heavy footsteps and serious expressions of law enforcement officers who had been told they were dealing with an unruly passenger. "Who requested police assistance?" asked Officer Martinez, the lead officer. "I did," Captain Rodriguez replied. "We have a passenger refusing to follow crew instructions and disrupting aircraft operations." Officer Martinez looked around the first-class cabin. Everyone was seated quietly. There was no visible disruption, no shouting, no aggressive behavior. Just a black woman sitting calmly in what appeared to be her assigned seat. What exactly is the passenger doing that requires police intervention? Officer Martinez asked. "She's sitting in a seat that she's not authorized to occupy." Rebecca jumped in. "We've explained that there's been a ticketing error, but she refuses to move." Officer Martinez walked over to Maya. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass and identification?" Maya handed over her phone and her driver's license. Officer Martinez examined both documents carefully. The boarding pass clearly showed seat 1A. The name on the identification matched the name on the ticket. Ma'am, this appears to be a valid ticket for this seat, Officer Martinez said to Rebecca. Can you show me documentation of the alleged error? Rebecca fumbled with her tablet. The computer has been glitching all day. It is working on it. So you don't have any documentation of an error, Officer Martinez pressed. I don't need documentation. I can recognize a fraudulent passenger when I see one. Officer Martinez, who had dealt with discrimination complaints before, recognized the red flags in Rebecca's language. Ms. Morrison, what specifically makes you believe this passenger is fraudulent? Rebecca was trapped. She couldn't say what she really believed without exposing herself to legal liability. But she couldn't back down without admitting she had been wrong. She just doesn't fit the profile, Rebecca said finally. What profile? Officer Martinez asked. The profile of someone who belongs in first class. David leaned forward from his seat. Officer, I'm an attorney and I've been witnessing this entire interaction. This passenger has been subjected to discriminatory treatment based solely on her appearance. She has a valid ticket, valid identification, and has committed no crime whatsoever. Officer Martinez nodded. Ma'am, he said to Rebecca, unless you can provide evidence of fraud or an actual computer error, I cannot remove a passenger with a valid ticket. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. Officer, I'm the captain of this aircraft. I have the authority to determine who can remain on board. I'm asking you to remove this passenger for disrupting operations. Captain Officer Martinez replied, You do have that authority, but if you're removing a passenger solely because of discriminatory treatment by your crew, you could be opening yourself and your airline to significant legal liability. Are you sure you want to proceed? Maya watched the exchange with growing satisfaction. She had let them escalate the situation as far as possible, and now they were facing the consequences of their decisions. But she wasn't finished yet. She had one more card to play. Maya stood up slowly and pulled out her phone. I think it's time to resolve this situation, she said calmly. She dialed a number and put the call on speaker so everyone could hear. Marcus Rivera, Chief Operating Officer. A voice answered immediately. Marcus, it's Maya. I'm on United Flight 8847 at Gate B28. We need to initiate the protocol. Understood, Ms. Thompson. Is this a discrimination incident? Yes. Full documentation. Legal team activation. And Marcus. Yes, ma'am. I want press releases ready to go out within the hour. Maya hung up and looked around the cabin. Rebecca. Captain Rodriguez Tyler and Officer Martinez were all staring at her with confusion. What was that about? Captain Rodriguez asked. Maya smiled for the first time since boarding the aircraft. That was me calling my chief operating officer to report a discrimination incident at one of our properties. One of your properties? Rebecca asked. That's right, Maya said. My name is Maya Thompson. I'm the CEO of Atlas Global Properties. As of 72 hours ago, my company acquired the management rights to Denver International Airport. The cabin went completely silent. You just threatened to have me arrested? Maya continued on property that I own. The silence that followed Maya's revelation lasted exactly 3 seconds before Tyler's live stream exploded with activity. His phone screen filled with comments flowing so fast they became an unreadable blur of text and emoji. His viewer count spiked from 2,000 to 15,000 in real time as word spread across social media that something incredible was happening on United Flight 8847. Tyler, who moments before had been confidently filming what he thought was an amusing passenger dispute, now found himself documenting the most expensive mistake of his life. His face went pale as he read the comments flooding his stream. Dude, you're screwed. She owns the airport. Delete this now, rip your career bro lawsuit incoming. But Tyler couldn't stop filming. His entire brand was built on capturing dramatic moments, and this was the most dramatic moment of his career. Even if it destroyed him, he couldn't look away from the train wreck he had helped create. Chat Tyler whispered into his camera, his voice shaking. "I think we might be in trouble here." David Parker was no longer just a bystander. As a corporate attorney, he recognized the magnitude of what he was witnessing. A major corporation's employees had just discriminated against the person who owned the property they were operating on. This wasn't just a customer service failure. This was potentially one of the most expensive civil rights violations in aviation history. David pulled out his phone and began recording officially. "This is David Parker," he announced to the cabin. "I'm an attorney, and I'm documenting this incident for legal purposes. Today is Thursday, March 23rd, approximately 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time on United Airlines Flight 8847 at Denver International Airport." Rebecca Morrison's face had gone from flushed red to ghostly white. "That's impossible," she stammered. "You can't own the airport. That's government property." Maya pulled out her phone and showed the screen to everyone in the cabin. "This is the press release that will go public tomorrow morning," she said calmly. "Atlas Global Properties has acquired the management rights to 6 major American airports, including Denver International. The deal was finalized Monday." Captain Rodriguez stepped closer to look at Maya's phone screen. The press release header read, "Atlas Global Properties announces $4.2 billion airport management acquisition CEO Maya Thompson to oversee operations at 6 major U.S. hubs." Holy crap. Captain Rodriguez whispered, then immediately caught himself using profanity in front of passengers. "I mean, I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Maya replied. "Because you didn't bother to find out who I was before you threatened to have me arrested. You looked at my clothes, looked at my skin color, and decided I was a criminal." Officer Martinez, who had remained professionally neutral throughout the confrontation, stepped forward. "Ms. Thompson, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience. Had I known about your position—" Officer Maya interrupted gently. "You did everything right. You asked for documentation, you refused to remove me without evidence, and you recognized this was a discrimination issue. Your conduct has been exemplary." Maya turned to face Rebecca, Captain Rodriguez, and Tyler. "The 3 of you, however, have some serious explaining to do." Tyler was still live streaming, but his comments section had become a wall of criticism. His follower count was dropping in real time as people unfollowed his accounts. Brand partnership notifications were pinging on his phone as companies canceled sponsorship deals. "Look," Tyler said, pointing his camera at Maya with shaking hands. "I can delete this video. We can pretend this never happened. I'll issue a public apology. Whatever you want." "Keep recording," Maya said firmly. "I want everyone to see this. I want the world to understand what happens when people make assumptions based on appearance." More passengers were pulling out their phones now. The woman in seat 3C was recording everything. The businessman in 2D had started a Facebook live stream. The elderly couple in row 4 were texting their children about the incredible thing happening on their flight. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were being uploaded to Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Flight 8847 Maya Thompson and Denver Airport were trending nationally as the story spread across social media platforms. Rebecca Morrison realized her career was evaporating in real time. "Ms. Thompson," she said, her voice shaking, "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I was just trying to maintain cabin standards." "Cabin standards," Maya repeated. "Tell me, Ms. Morrison, what exactly are your cabin standards? Who belongs in first class and who doesn't?" Rebecca couldn't answer because any honest response would expose her prejudice even further. David Parker spoke up from his seat. "For the record, I observed Ms. Morrison treat me with courtesy and respect when I boarded with my first-class ticket. The difference in her treatment of Ms. Thompson was stark and immediate. The only variable was race." "That's not true," Rebecca protested weakly. "I treat all passengers equally. No, you don't, said the woman in 3C, holding up her phone. I've been recording since this started. You were rude to her from the moment she approached the aircraft door. You refused to look at her boarding pass. You accused her of fraud with no evidence, and you physically blocked her from entering. Captain Rodriguez realized his position was becoming untenable. Ms. Thompson, I sincerely apologize. I was responding to my crew's report of a problem passenger. I should have verified the situation myself before escalating. You should have Maya agreed. But you didn't. Instead, you threatened me with federal charges for the crime of sitting in a seat I purchased. Do you understand how serious those charges would have been for me? Captain Rodriguez nodded miserably. Interfering with a flight crew is a felony. You could have faced federal prison time for sitting in my assigned seat while Black Maya added, think about that. Tyler was having a complete meltdown on his live stream. Chat. I need to end this stream. This is getting too real. I can't handle this. I didn't know she owned the airport. How was I supposed to know? Comments flooded in. Maybe don't be racist. Actions have consequences, should have minded your business. Maya noticed Tyler's distress and addressed him directly. Mr. Brooks, you filmed me without my consent, mocked my appearance, implied I was a criminal, and broadcast those accusations to millions of people. What consequences do you think should follow from those actions? Tyler was crying now. Actual tears streaming down his face as he realized the magnitude of his situation. I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. You didn't mean to get caught, Maya corrected. But you absolutely meant to humiliate someone you thought was powerless. The only thing you're sorry about is that your victim turned out to have more power than you do. Maya's phone was buzzing constantly with calls and messages. Her legal team was already preparing documentation. Her PR team was coordinating with news outlets. Her operations team was reviewing security footage from every camera in Terminal 3. Marcus Maya said, answering a call and putting it on speaker again. Status report. Legal team is en route to the airport. Marcus Rivera's voice filled the cabin. Security footage has been preserved from all angles. Social media monitoring shows the story is already trending nationally. PR team has requests for comment from CNN, NBC, ABC, and Fox News. And the airport operations team standing by for your instructions, Ms. Thompson. Maya looked around the first-class cabin. Every passenger was paying attention. Every phone was recording. This moment would define how seriously Atlas Global took discrimination on its properties. Marcus effective immediately. United Airlines Flight 8847 is grounded pending investigation. No passengers on or off until we complete a full review of this incident. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. Ms. Thompson, you can't ground a commercial flight. We have passengers with connections business meetings. Captain Maya interrupted. I own this airport. I can absolutely ground any aircraft on my property that I believe poses a safety or security risk. Your crew's conduct has created both. Maya continued, speaking to Marcus on the phone. I also want immediate suspension of Rebecca Morrison's airport access badge. She's no longer authorized on airport property. Understood. And the passenger who was filming Maya looked at Tyler, who was still streaming live but no longer speaking. His viewer count had peaked at over 50,000 people watching his career implode in real time. Mr. Tyler Brooks is banned from all Atlas Global properties effective immediately. That includes 6 major airports as of Monday's acquisition completion. Tyler's phone slipped from his hands and clattered to the floor. He was banned from airports in Denver, Miami, Seattle, Phoenix, Detroit, and Portland. His ability to travel for content creation had just been destroyed. Please, Tyler whispered. This is my livelihood. I need to be able to travel for work. You should have thought about that before you decided to mock and humiliate someone for your entertainment, Maya replied. David Parker was still recording everything. As an attorney, he understood the legal implications of what he was witnessing. Miss Thompson, for the legal record, can you state whether this incident will result in formal discrimination complaints? Maya nodded. Atlas Global will be filing complaints with the Department of Transportation, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the Federal Aviation Administration. We're also reviewing all civil remedies available under federal and state civil rights laws. Rebecca Morrison was crying now, too. Please, Ms. Thompson, I have a family. I need this job. I made a mistake, but I can learn from it. Maya looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. Ms. Morrison, you didn't make a mistake. Mistakes are accidental. You made a choice. You chose to treat me as less than human because of how I looked. That choice has consequences. But I can change, Rebecca pleaded. I can take sensitivity training. I can do better. I'm sure you can, Maya agreed. But you won't be doing it while representing United Airlines on my property. The cabin had become a courtroom with Maya serving as both victim and judge. Every word was being recorded from multiple angles. Every decision would be scrutinized by lawyers, activists, and the general public. Maya's phone rang again. This is CNN, Marcus reported. They want to do a live interview when you're ready. Tell them I'll give a statement after we finish here, Maya replied. She looked around the cabin one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want everyone here to understand what happened today. 3 people saw a black woman in casual clothes and decided she didn't belong in first class. They didn't check facts. They didn't verify information. They just acted on their prejudices and tried to humiliate someone they thought was powerless. Maya's voice grew stronger. But here's what they didn't understand. Every single person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their appearance, their race, or their perceived social status. And when that dignity is violated, there must be consequences. She stood up to address the entire cabin. The flight will remain grounded while we complete our investigation. Hotel accommodations will be provided by Atlas Global for any passengers who miss connections due to this delay. And I want everyone to understand that this is how discrimination will be handled at every Atlas Global property going forward. Maya gathered her belongings and prepared to leave the aircraft. Officer Martinez, thank you for your professionalism. Mr. Parker, thank you for speaking up when others remained silent. That's what real allyship looks like. As Maya walked toward the aircraft door, Tyler made one last desperate attempt. Ms. Thompson, please. Isn't there something we can work out? Some kind of community service or public apology? Maya stopped and turned back to him. Mr. Brooks, you have 2.8 million followers. Use that platform to educate them about why what happened here was wrong. Show them the real consequences of prejudice. Do that effectively, and we might discuss reducing your travel ban in a year. Tyler nodded eagerly. Yes, I can do that. Thank you for the second chance. This isn't a second chance, Maya corrected. This is an opportunity to face the consequences of your first choice. As Maya stepped off Flight 8847, she was greeted by a crowd of airport employees, news crews, and passengers who had heard about the incident. But she wasn't interested in speaking to reporters yet. First, she had some changes to make. Maya's exit from Flight 8847 triggered a chain reaction throughout Denver International Airport that would reshape how the entire aviation industry handled discrimination complaints. As word spread that the CEO of Atlas Global Properties had been subjected to racial profiling on one of her own properties, every terminal, every gate, and every operational center buzzed with urgent activity. Maya walked through the jet bridge with the measured pace of someone who owned not just the building around her, but the power to transform it. Her phone vibrated constantly with calls from her legal team, her executive staff, and news outlets across the country. But Maya ignored them all. She had more immediate concerns. Marcus Rivera, Atlas Global's chief operating officer, was waiting for her at Gate B28 with a tablet full of real-time updates and a team of lawyers who had driven directly from their downtown Denver offices. Marcus was a 38-year-old former federal prosecutor who had left the Department of Justice to join Maya's mission of using corporate power to fight institutional discrimination. "Status report," Maya said simply. Marcus handed her the tablet showing live social media feeds. The story is trending #1 on Twitter nationally. Flight 8847 has over 200,000 mentions in the past hour. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all want live interviews. The video clips have been viewed over 2 million times. Maya scrolled through the social media posts. Tyler's live stream had captured everything from multiple angles. Passengers' phones had recorded the entire confrontation. The story wasn't just going viral, it was becoming a cultural moment. "Legal team assessment," Maya asked. "Rebecca Morrison violated at least 6 federal civil rights laws," said Jennifer Walsh, Atlas Global's chief legal counsel. "Captain Rodriguez enabled the violation through his threats of arrest. Tyler Brooks committed criminal harassment with potential hate crime enhancements. United Airlines exposure. Massive." Jennifer continued. "This happened on their aircraft with their employees. They're looking at federal investigations, civil rights lawsuits, and potential damages in the tens of millions." Maya nodded. "Good. What about our operational response?" Marcus pulled up security footage on his tablet. "Every camera angle has been preserved. We've identified 12 airport employees who witnessed parts of the incident. All are being interviewed to document the complete timeline and the broader implications. This is the test case we've been waiting for," Marcus explained. "Atlas Global now controls 6 major airports. How we handle this incident will set the precedent for discrimination response at every one of our properties." Maya looked around Terminal 3. Travelers were going about their business, most unaware that the entire aviation industry was about to change because of what had happened on Flight 8847. But Maya was aware. She had spent 23 years building the power to make this moment count. "I want immediate implementation of the Universal Dignity Protocol at all Atlas properties," Maya announced. "Full deployment by end of business tomorrow." The Universal Dignity Protocol was Atlas Global's comprehensive anti-discrimination framework that Maya had developed over years of experience in the hospitality industry. It included mandatory bias training for all employees, body cameras for customer service interactions, independent advocate programs for discrimination complaints, and automatic federal review triggers for any incident involving racial profiling. "That's a massive operational undertaking," Marcus warned. 6 airports, 50,000 employees, hundreds of vendors and contractors. "Then we better get started," Maya replied. As Maya's team spread out across Terminal 3 to begin implementation, news crews were setting up outside the airport's main entrance. The story had broken nationally, and reporters from every major network were racing to Denver to cover what media outlets were already calling the most expensive discrimination incident in aviation history. Back on Flight 8847, the aftermath of Maya's revelation was playing out in real time. Rebecca Morrison sat in the first-class galley, no longer the confident authority figure who had blocked Maya's path an hour earlier. Her hands shook as she tried to process the magnitude of her situation. Rebecca's supervisor, United Airlines regional manager Patricia Holmes, had arrived at the gate within minutes of receiving an emergency call from the cockpit. Patricia was a 20-year veteran of airline operations who had handled every conceivable crisis, but she had never dealt with anything like this. "Rebecca," Patricia said, her voice carefully controlled. "Walk me through exactly what happened." Rebecca tried to explain, but every sentence made her situation worse. She didn't look like she belonged in first class. "I was just trying to maintain cabin standards. I've seen this scam before where people try to steal upgrades." "Did you verify her boarding pass?" "She showed me her phone, but I knew it had to be fake." "How did you know Rebecca couldn't answer without admitting to racial profiling?" "She just didn't fit the profile." Patricia closed her eyes. In her 20 years with United, she had never heard an employee openly admit to profiling passengers based on appearance. Rebecca had not only violated company policy and federal law, but she had done it while being recorded by multiple passengers. "Rebecca, you're suspended immediately pending investigation," Patricia announced. "Security will escort you from the airport property." Captain Rodriguez was facing his own reckoning. The Federal Aviation Administration had already opened an investigation into his conduct. Threatening a passenger with federal charges without proper justification could result in the suspension or revocation of his commercial pilot's license. Patricia, Captain Rodriguez said, approaching the gate area. "I need to speak with Miss Thompson personally." "I want to apologize directly," James Patricia replied. "As of right now, you're grounded pending FAA review. You threatened to arrest the person who owns this airport. There may not be enough apologies in the world to fix that." Tyler Brooks had stopped his live stream, but the damage was already done. Clips of his mocking commentary about Maya's appearance were being shared across every social media platform. His brand partnerships were canceling in real time, and his management team was preparing for a complete career rehabilitation that might take years to accomplish. Tyler's phone buzzed with a call from his manager. "Tyler, we need to talk immediately. Every sponsor is pulling out. Your tour dates are being canceled. You've lost over 100,000 followers in the past hour." "Can we fix this?" Tyler asked desperately. Maybe his manager replied. "But it's going to require a complete change in your content strategy, massive community service, and probably years of work to rebuild your reputation." Meanwhile, David Parker was giving a detailed statement to Atlas Global's legal team. As the only neutral witness to the entire incident, his testimony would be crucial for any legal proceedings. "I want to be clear," David told Jennifer Walsh, Atlas Global's chief counsel. "Ms. Morrison's treatment of Ms. Thompson was obviously discriminatory. The difference in her behavior toward me versus Ms. Thompson was stark and immediate. This wasn't a misunderstanding or miscommunication. This was prejudice, pure and simple." Maya returned to gate B-28 to address the passengers who were still waiting on flight 8847. The aircraft remained grounded while Atlas Global's investigation continued, but Maya wanted to speak directly to the people who had witnessed the incident. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya announced over the gate intercom, "this is Maya Thompson, CEO of Atlas Global Properties. I want to personally thank those of you who spoke up during the incident on Flight 8847. Your willingness to document discrimination and demand accountability represents the best of human character." She continued, "For those of you who remained silent, I understand that intervention can be difficult and sometimes dangerous. But I want you to understand that silence in the face of injustice enables that injustice to continue." Maya's voice grew stronger. "Going forward, every Atlas Global property will have mechanisms in place to make intervention easier and safer. You'll see passenger advocate phones in every terminal bias incident reporting apps and staff trained specifically to handle discrimination complaints." She concluded, "This incident happened because 3 people saw a black woman in casual clothes and decided she didn't belong in first class. They acted on their prejudices without checking facts, without seeking truth, and without considering the humanity of the person they were targeting. That cannot and will not happen again at any Atlas Global property." As Maya finished her announcement, she received a text message that changed everything. It was from the White House. "Ms. Thompson, this is Sandra Martinez from the Office of Public Engagement. The President would like to speak with you about today's incident and its implications for transportation equity. Are you available for a call this evening?" Maya showed the message to Marcus. "The President wants to talk." "This story isn't just trending on social media," Marcus explained. "It's become a national conversation about discrimination in travel. Congress is already talking about hearings. The Department of Transportation is reviewing policies. This incident is going to reshape the entire industry." Maya realized that what had started as a personal experience of discrimination had become something much larger. She had the opportunity to turn this moment into lasting change that would protect countless future travelers from experiencing what she had experienced. Set up the call with the White House, Maya decided, and get me a direct line to the CEOs of every major airline. If we're going to change this industry, we need to change it completely. As news crews gathered outside Denver International Airport, Maya prepared to give the statement that would define not just her response to discrimination, but her vision for how the entire transportation industry should treat every passenger with dignity and respect. The woman who had been told she didn't belong in first class was about to reshape what first class meant for everyone. But first, she had 3 more people to deal with. Maya walked back onto Flight 8847 one final time. Rebecca Morrison was being escorted from the aircraft by airport security. Her employee badge confiscated her career in aviation effectively over. Captain Rodriguez stood near the cockpit door, his confident authority replaced by the hollow expression of someone who understood his professional life was in ruins. Tyler Brooks sat alone in the first-class cabin, no longer filming, no longer performing for his audience, just a young man who had finally encountered real consequences for his actions. Maya approached each of them one final time, not for their benefit, but for the benefit of every person watching who needed to understand that actions have consequences and that dignity is not negotiable. "Ms. Morrison," Maya said as Rebecca was led past her in handcuffs, "I want you to remember this moment. Remember that every person you serve in the future is someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's sister. Their worth is not determined by your assumptions about their appearance." Rebecca nodded through her tears, unable to speak. Captain Rodriguez Maya continued, turning to the pilot who had threatened her with arrest. "You have the authority to make life-changing decisions about passengers. Use that authority to protect people, not to punish them for failing to meet your expectations about how they should look." Captain Rodriguez managed to speak. "Ms. Thompson, I will spend the rest of my career making up for what I did today." "Don't make it up to me," Maya replied. "Make it up to every passenger who doesn't have the power I have. Protect them the way you should have protected me." Finally, Maya approached Tyler Brooks, who was still sitting in first class, his camera equipment packed away, his streaming career effectively over. "Mr. Brooks," Maya said, "you have a choice to make. You can spend the next year feeling sorry for yourself and blaming everyone else for your situation. Or you can use this experience to educate your followers about why discrimination is wrong and what its real consequences look like." Tyler looked up at her with genuine remorse. "I choose education. I want to do better." "Then do better," Maya said simply. "Start now." As Maya left Flight 8847 for the final time, she carried with her not just the satisfaction of justice served, but the responsibility of power exercised wisely. She had not just defeated discrimination, she had created a blueprint for how to fight it. The real work was just beginning. The fallout from Flight 8847 began before Maya Thompson even left Denver International Airport. Within 2 hours of the incident, the story had exploded across every news platform, social media network, and aviation industry publication in the world. But this wasn't just another viral video about passenger mistreatment. This was a seismic shift in power that would reshape how airlines treated every passenger going forward. Rebecca Morrison's termination from United Airlines was swift and absolute. As she was escorted through Terminal 3 by airport security, her access badge was deactivated, her employee accounts were suspended, and her 8-year career in aviation came to an abrupt end. But Rebecca's consequences extended far beyond losing her job. The video footage of Rebecca's discriminatory treatment had been viewed over 10 million times across various platforms. Her face became synonymous with racial profiling in the service industry. Employment lawyers across the country were already preparing to use her case as a textbook example of how not to treat customers. Rebecca Morrison had become a cautionary tale that would be taught in discrimination training programs for years to come. Rebecca's immediate supervisor, Patricia Holmes, was conducting damage control at an emergency meeting with United Airlines' crisis management team. The airline's stock price had dropped 4% in after-hours trading as investors realized the potential legal and reputational costs of the incident. "What's our legal exposure?" asked United's chief legal officer, Robert Chen, joining the meeting via video conference from the airline's Chicago headquarters. "Catastrophic," Patricia replied bluntly. Rebecca admitted to racial profiling while being recorded by multiple passengers. She physically blocked a paying customer from boarding based on appearance. She made false accusations of fraud without evidence. And she did all of this to the person who owns the airport property. Potential damages. Conservative estimate, $50 million minimum. Maya Thompson has unlimited resources to pursue this case, and she has every major civil rights organization in the country offering to support her. Settlement options. Patricia shook her head. "This isn't about money for Ms. Thompson. She could buy and sell our entire airline without checking her bank balance. This is about setting a precedent that discrimination has consequences." Robert Chen understood the implications immediately. United Airlines wasn't just facing a lawsuit. They were facing the possibility of being banned from operating at 6 major airports controlled by Atlas Global Properties. That would effectively end their transcontinental route network. Captain Rodriguez was facing even more serious consequences. The Federal Aviation Administration had opened an immediate investigation into his conduct with the potential for criminal charges if they determined he had violated federal civil rights laws under color of authority. Captain Rodriguez sat in an empty conference room at Denver International Airport, meeting with his union representative and a criminal defense attorney his wife had hired during the 2 hours since the incident. "James," his attorney said, "you need to understand the severity of your situation. You threatened a passenger with federal charges for the act of sitting in her assigned seat. That's false imprisonment, abuse of authority, and potentially a federal civil rights violation." "I was backing up my crew," Captain Rodriguez protested. "I didn't know she owned the airport." "That's exactly the problem," his union representative interjected. "Whether she owned the airport or was completely powerless shouldn't have mattered. You don't threaten passengers with arrest unless they've committed actual crimes." Captain Rodriguez's 20-year flying career was hanging by a thread. The FAA was reviewing his pilot's license. United was conducting their own investigation, and the incident was being examined by federal civil rights prosecutors to determine if criminal charges were warranted. But the most immediate consequence for Captain Rodriguez was professional exile. Word had already spread throughout the aviation industry that he had threatened to arrest Maya Thompson. No airline would hire a pilot who had been involved in a high-profile discrimination incident, regardless of the legal outcome. Tyler Brooks was experiencing his own professional apocalypse in real time. His social media accounts, which had been the foundation of his career and identity, were hemorrhaging followers by the thousands. Brand partnerships worth hundreds of thousands of dollars annually were being canceled via email and text message faster than Tyler could read the notifications. Tyler sat in his hotel room near Denver International Airport, watching his career disintegrate on his phone screen. His management team had scheduled an emergency video conference to discuss damage control, but Tyler knew there might be no coming back from this. "Tyler," his manager Sarah Kim said over video chat, "we need to discuss your options going forward." "What options?" Tyler asked bitterly. "My accounts are being demonetized, my sponsors are dropping me, and I'm banned from 6 major airports. My travel content career is over." "Not necessarily," Sarah replied, "but it requires a complete pivot. You need to become an advocate for the people you hurt. You need to dedicate your platform to fighting discrimination and educating your audience about privilege. For how long? Years, Tyler. Maybe forever. This isn't a scandal that goes away with a simple apology. You mocked a black woman on camera and accused her of being a criminal. That's going to follow you for the rest of your life. Tyler's phone buzzed with another cancellation notice. A streaming platform had just terminated his content creation contract worth $300,000 per year. Tyler was learning what consequences looked like when they came for someone who had built their entire life on privilege and appearance. Meanwhile, David Parker was being hailed as a hero across social media for his decision to speak up during the confrontation. Videos of David challenging Rebecca's discrimination and demanding that she check the passenger manifest were being shared millions of times with captions like, "This is what allyship looks like," and "using privilege to protect others." David was uncomfortable with the attention, but he understood its importance. In an interview with CNN later that evening, David explained his decision to intervene. "I watched a black woman being treated completely differently than I had been treated just minutes earlier. The difference was stark and obviously based on race. As a white man in a position of privilege, I had a responsibility to speak up. Remaining silent would have made me complicit in discrimination." David's law firm was flooded with interview requests and speaking invitations. His decision to document the discrimination had turned him into a symbol of how bystanders could effectively challenge prejudice. But David redirected all attention back to Maya Thompson and the broader issue of transportation equity. The other passengers on Flight 8847 were also experiencing consequences, though theirs were largely positive. The woman in seat 3C, Maria Santos, who had filmed Rebecca's discriminatory treatment, was being praised for her documentation of the incident. Her video footage would become crucial evidence in the legal proceedings that would follow. "I knew I had to record it," Maria explained to a local Denver news station. "What was happening to that woman was wrong, and I knew people wouldn't believe it unless they could see it for themselves." The elderly couple in row 4, Robert and Helen Chang, had initially been annoyed by the delay, but became supportive of Maya once they understood what was happening. In interviews later, they expressed regret about their initial reaction. "We were focused on our connection flight," Helen admitted. "We didn't realize we were watching someone being discriminated against. It's a reminder to pay attention to what's really happening around us." Atlas Global's response to the incident was swift and comprehensive. Within hours of Maya's announcement on the aircraft, the company had activated its crisis management team, deployed legal resources, and begun implementing policy changes across all 6 of their airport properties. Marcus Rivera was coordinating the response from Atlas Global's temporary command center at Denver International Airport. The company had taken over an entire conference center to manage the legal, operational, and public relations aspects of what was already being called the most significant discrimination incident in aviation history. "Status report," Maya said, entering the command center after giving statements to news crews outside the airport. "Legal team has documented everything," Marcus replied. "We have camera footage from 17 different angles, testimony from 12 witnesses, and the complete audio recording from Tyler Brooks's live stream." Media response. Every major outlet wants interviews. CNN, NBC, ABC, Fox News. 60 Minutes and 3 documentary crews. Your story is leading every evening newscast in the country. Industry response. "That's where it gets interesting," Marcus continued. "We've received calls from the CEOs of American Delta Southwest and JetBlue. They all want to meet about implementing similar anti-discrimination policies across the industry." Maya was surprised by the immediate industry response. "They're volunteering to change their policies." "They're terrified," Marcus explained. "If Atlas Global can ban an entire airline from 6 major airports for discrimination, every carrier in the country needs to ensure their employees don't make the same mistakes United made today." Maya realized that her experience on Flight 8847 had created an opportunity to reshape the entire aviation industry's approach to discrimination. Airlines that had ignored discrimination complaints for decades were suddenly interested in meaningful policy changes because they understood the financial consequences of inaction. Schedule meetings with all of them. Maya decided. If they want to avoid what happened to United, they need to prove they're serious about change. United Airlines, meanwhile, was in full crisis mode. CEO Oscar Washington had issued a public apology within hours of the incident, but public reaction was overwhelmingly negative. Social media users pointed out that United had faced multiple discrimination controversies in recent years, suggesting this incident represented a pattern rather than an isolated mistake. "We take full responsibility for the discriminatory treatment Ms. Thompson received from our employees." Washington's statement read, "There is no excuse for the behavior exhibited by our crew, and we are implementing immediate changes to ensure this never happens again." But Maya Thompson wasn't interested in United's apologies. She was interested in structural changes that would protect every passenger, not just those with the power to fight back. Late that evening, Maya received the call she had been expecting from the White House. President Jennifer Walsh wanted to discuss the broader implications of the incident for transportation equity and civil rights enforcement, Ms. Thompson. President Walsh said during their 30-minute conversation, "What happened to you today cannot happen to anyone anywhere in America. I want to discuss federal policy changes that would strengthen civil rights protections for travelers." Maya was ready with specific proposals. "Madam President, we need federal requirements for bias training in transportation, independent advocacy programs for discrimination complaints, and automatic Department of Justice review for any incident involving racial profiling. Those are substantial changes to federal policy." "The alternative is substantial damage to American values," Maya replied. "Every day, countless travelers face discrimination based on their appearance, their race, their religion, or their perceived social status. Most of them don't have the power to fight back. Federal policy needs to protect them." President Walsh agreed to work with Maya on developing legislation that would be introduced in Congress within the month. The Flight 8847 incident had created political momentum for civil rights changes that had been stalled for years. As Maya finished her call with the president, she received a text message from her daughter in Miami. "Mom, I saw the news. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and for everyone who looks like us. You turned a terrible experience into something that will help people forever." Maya smiled for the first time since the incident began. The consequences of Rebecca Morrison's, Captain Rodriguez's, and Tyler Brooks's discriminatory behavior would indeed last forever. But so would the changes that Maya Thompson was about to implement to ensure no one else would face what she had faced on Flight 8847. The real work of transformation was just beginning. 1 month later, Maya Thompson walked through the same Terminal 3 at Denver International Airport, where she had been humiliated and threatened with arrest. But everything had changed. The terminal hummed with a different energy, now one of awareness, respect, and accountability that had rippled through the entire aviation industry. The Universal Dignity Protocol that Maya had implemented across all Atlas Global properties had become the gold standard for anti-discrimination policies in transportation. Every employee wore body cameras during customer interactions. Passenger advocacy phones were installed at every gate. Digital reporting mechanisms allowed real-time documentation of bias incidents. Most importantly, every staff member had completed comprehensive dignity training that focused not on compliance but on recognizing the humanity in every traveler. Maya paused at Gate B28 where Flight 8847 had been grounded during her confrontation with Rebecca Morrison. A small plaque now marked the spot in recognition of the courage to demand dignity and the power to create change. Below it, the Universal Dignity Charter was displayed for every passenger to see. The changes extended far beyond Denver. United Airlines had negotiated a comprehensive settlement with Maya that included $50 million in damages donated to civil rights organizations, complete policy reform across their fleet, and ongoing oversight by Atlas Global's discrimination response team. But more importantly, every major airline in America had voluntarily adopted similar policies to avoid United's fate. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Rivera. Congressional hearing went well. Senator Martinez says the Transportation Equity Act has enough votes to pass. Your testimony convinced the holdouts. Maya smiled. The federal legislation she had worked with President Walsh to develop was moving through Congress with bipartisan support. The Flight 8847 incident had created political momentum for civil rights protections that policy advocates had been seeking for decades. As Maya continued through the terminal, she noticed the changes in real time. A young Muslim woman in traditional dress was being assisted courteously by a gate agent who 3 months earlier might have subjected her to random additional screening. An elderly black man in casual clothes was being welcomed warmly at the first-class counter without question or suspicion. A family speaking Spanish was receiving patient, respectful service without being made to feel unwelcome. These weren't grand gestures or performative displays. These were the quiet daily interactions that demonstrated how completely the culture had shifted. Dignity wasn't being enforced from above. It was being practiced instinctively, because employees understood that every passenger deserved respect regardless of appearance. Maya's destination was Gate A15, where she was boarding a flight to Miami. Not on United Airlines, which had invited her back with first-class upgrades and personal apologies from their new CEO, but on Delta, whose response to the Flight 8847 incident had impressed her most. Delta had proactively contacted Atlas Global to request discrimination training for all employees, not because they faced legal pressure, but because they recognized it was the right thing to do. At the gate, Maya was approached by a young black woman who looked to be in her 20s. The woman was dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie, carrying a backpack that had seen considerable travel. "Excuse me?" the woman said nervously. "Are you Maya Thompson?" Maya nodded, wondering if she was about to face another confrontation or recognition she didn't want. "I just wanted to thank you," the woman continued. "My name is Aisha, and I travel a lot for work. 3 weeks ago, I was flying through Phoenix, and a gate agent started questioning whether my first-class ticket was legitimate. But instead of making me prove I belonged there, she apologized and said her company had new policies about treating all passengers with dignity." Aisha's eyes filled with tears. "She said those policies existed because of what happened to you, because you fought back when someone tried to make you feel small." Maya felt emotion rise in her throat. "What you experienced is why I did this. Not for me, but for you. For every person who shouldn't have to prove their humanity to access a space they paid to occupy." "I know my ticket was real," Aisha continued. "I know I belonged in that seat. But before your story, I might have doubted myself. I might have moved to economy just to avoid conflict. Your courage gave me permission to stand my ground." This was the moment Maya had been working toward for 23 years. Not the destruction of Rebecca Morrison, Captain Rodriguez, or Tyler Brooks, but the protection of Aisha and thousands of other travelers who looked like them. The personal victory was meaningless compared to the cultural change it had enabled. As Maya boarded her Delta flight, she was greeted by a flight attendant named Jennifer, who smiled warmly and said, "Welcome aboard, Ms. Thompson. It's an honor to have you flying with us today." Maya settled into seat 1A and pulled out her phone to check messages. Tyler Brooks had sent her a video link with a note, 6 months of education content as promised. "Thank you for giving me a chance to do better." Maya watched Tyler's latest video, which had been viewed over 2 million times. In it, he spoke directly to his audience about privilege, prejudice, and the real consequences of discrimination. His content had evolved from pranks and displays of wealth to thoughtful discussions of social justice and accountability. "I used to think my success meant I was better than other people," Tyler said in the video. But success without compassion is just noise. Real influence means using your platform to protect people who don't have the same advantages you do. Tyler's follower count had dropped to 800,000, but his engagement had actually increased as his content became more meaningful. Several civil rights organizations had hired him to speak about privilege and allyship to young audiences. Tyler was learning that consequences could become opportunities if you faced them honestly. Captain Rodriguez had not been as fortunate. The FAA had suspended his pilot's license for 6 months, and United Airlines had terminated his employment. But Captain Rodriguez had used that time to enroll in conflict resolution training and volunteer with transportation advocacy organizations. In his victim impact statement, he had written to Maya, "I cannot undo the harm I caused you, but I can ensure that my mistake serves a purpose. I now understand that my authority as a pilot gave me the power to protect passengers, not punish them for failing to meet my expectations about appearance. I will spend the rest of my career making amends for that failure." Captain Rodriguez was working toward reinstatement of his license, but with a deeper understanding of his responsibility to treat every passenger with dignity, regardless of their appearance. Rebecca Morrison's consequences had been the most severe. She faced criminal charges for false imprisonment and civil rights violations, ultimately receiving 18 months of community service and a permanent ban from employment in customer-facing transportation roles. But Rebecca had also written to Maya, "I cannot claim I didn't know better. I cannot claim I was just following policy. I made conscious choices to treat you as less than human because of your race and appearance. Those choices revealed who I really was, and I am working every day to become someone better." Rebecca was completing her community service at a homeless shelter, learning to see dignity in every person, regardless of their circumstances. Her experience had become a case study in discrimination training programs across the country. Maya's flight to Miami was smooth and peaceful. No one questioned her presence in first class. No one demanded to see additional identification. No one suggested she might be more comfortable in economy. She was treated with the dignity that should be afforded to every passenger regardless of their appearance or perceived social status. As the aircraft descended toward Miami International Airport, another Atlas Global property, Maya reflected on how completely the landscape had changed. The teenager who had slept in her car outside that Atlanta hotel 23 years ago had not just built an empire. She had used that empire to ensure other young women wouldn't face the same humiliation. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her daughter, Mom. "I start college next month knowing that if anyone ever treats me the way those people treated you, there are mechanisms in place to hold them accountable. Thank you for fighting for dignity instead of just demanding apologies." That message captured everything Maya had accomplished. She hadn't just defeated discrimination, she had built infrastructure to prevent it. She hadn't just won justice for herself, she had created pathways for justice that would protect countless future travelers. The plane touched down in Miami, and Maya gathered her belongings. Tomorrow she would return to running a multi-billion-dollar corporation managing airport operations and expanding Atlas Global's influence. But tonight, she would go home knowing that the scared 19-year-old who had been turned away from that hotel lobby had finally kept her promise. No one would ever again be denied dignity because of how they looked while traveling through an Atlas Global property. And thanks to the industry-wide changes Maya had forced into existence, that protection now extended to millions of travelers across the entire American aviation network. As Maya walked through Miami International Airport toward her waiting car, she passed a young black woman in casual clothes approaching the first-class check-in counter. The woman looked nervous, as if expecting to be challenged or questioned. Maya watched as the gate agent smiled warmly and said, "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you today?" The woman handed over her boarding pass with visible relief. "First class to New York." "Excellent," the gate agent replied, scanning the ticket without a second glance. "You're all set. Have a wonderful flight." Maya smiled and continued walking. The framework was working. Dignity was being protected. The future that 19-year-old Maya had dreamed of while sleeping in her car had finally become reality. And it would last long after Maya Thompson's name was forgotten, because true change doesn't depend on individual heroes. It depends on building frameworks that protect everyone's humanity, regardless of their power, their appearance, or their ability to fight back. Maya Thompson had done more than own an airport. She had transformed what it meant to belong. And if this story of courage, dignity, and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about people who refuse to accept discrimination and fight for a better world. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Maya's message that every person deserves respect, regardless of how they look or where they come from. Your engagement helps us reach more people with these important stories. What moment from Maya's journey inspired you most? Let us know in the comments below. Together, we can continue spreading the message that dignity is not negotiable and justice is always worth fighting for. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.